there. All right, let's go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Future-Oriented Approach to Residential Task Force. Cami, if you could call roll for us, please.
Daniel. Danny.
Cami, you're on mute. Oh, no, you're not. But we can't hear you.
Just say present.
There you go. Now we can hear you.
Just say present when I call your name. Chairman Bart McLeroy.
Present.
Peggy Quinn, Vice Chair.
Present.
Maria Baclaranda.
Present.
Russell Cowdery.
Present.
Sheila Manis.
Present.
Danielle Mirabal.
He's present.
Yvonne Silva. Take that as not present. Kamesh Suburo. And Subbu Venkat. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 3 is consider approval of the April 14th, 2021 Foard Task Force meeting minutes. Those minutes were attached. I believe Maria had brought up an issue regarding spelling.
Yeah, that's my only issue, but I heard it was going to be revised. I haven't revised it again.
Okay. Did anyone else have any notes regarding the minutes or any other items related to the minutes?
I would move to approve the minutes with the correct spelling, though, for Maria's last name.
Okay, Peggy moves to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I second.
Russell seconds. All in favor? You could just do show of hands. You can see. Any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. Agenda item number 4 was discussion regarding City Council presentation.
Can I jump in real quick, Bart?
Yes, Mindy.
Okay, I want to compliment the job that Bart did and the work Peggy did up front. I know everybody contributed, but Bart did a wonderful job on the presentation. City Council really appreciated it. And so I just wanted to start off by saying that, Bart. And I just wanted to see if anybody was able to watch it, just to see just so we know where we're starting from, if people were able to see it or not. And it's okay if you didn't. Trust me, it's okay. I just wanted to see. So, okay. So, Bart, I'll turn it over to you to kind of talk through it then.
Okay, thanks. And I appreciate the kind words, Mindy. Really appreciate Peggy's work on the PowerPoint presentation. And, of course, everyone here who chimed in on our 2 test runs to help figure out what needed to go where and get everything sorted out so it made a cohesive narrative that was very helpful. Yes, so gave the presentation. Now I can't even remember the date that happened. It was pre-election, but first of all, the city council, wanted to pass on just the fact that how grateful they are to everyone on this board for volunteering your time and efforts, and they really do appreciate it. They know that things like this, and things that I brought up during the presentation, for example, talking about the potential for targeted tax abatements or credits for people to make homes more livable for seniors. That's something someone mentioned. Yeah, we thought about this years ago and just kind of never had time to pursue it. So the fact that people are looking at it and could potentially put forth a proposal is really exciting to them. I'd say that went very well. The presentation did. Everyone kind of nodding along and looking interested, so that was good. I think I got it down to like 11 minutes, so that's not too bad. So they did have questions after the presentation. So one thing that Wes May pointed out was that we'd put in a slide about we kind of want some information about the financial standing of the city. Because we need to know kind of what's possible to pursue and what's not. And Wes said that's kind of a very broad broad question, really. In fact, if we want specific questions about, or questions answered about, like, what kind of money could be set aside for, this type of project or that type of project, that's something they could answer. But just like, how's the money looking is a little too broad. So as we're going through and cementing ideas that we want to pursue and put in front of the city, that's something we'll need to consider. And they did like the idea of a work session with us, by the way, where we could discuss things in more detail. Karen Hunt mentioned that at that future work session, suggests that if we want to engage consultants or undertake studies, we should come with the bids or costs already in place, and that the bids should be detailed so the city council will have an idea as to what the board is asking for. So I think we've done some good work on that so far, and we'll talk some more today about future work in that direction. And then finally, Councilman Matthews said that the council will, if you're asking about senior subsidies or federal or city programs, that sort of thing, based on income, again, he was just pointing out that he would think the council would want to see some detailed financial information about what the board is asking for. So it's worth keeping in mind going forward that, oh boy, okay. Cammie, you're supposed to keep me in line here. I did skip over citizens' appearances entirely, so I don't think we have any, which is good, but yeah, sorry about that, y'all. Okay, back to what I was saying. So yes, something to consider is that as we're putting together ideas and taking them to the city council, one thing we'll want to consider is we're going to want to have like very specific asks, and not just say, well, generally we would like to see this. I think they're going to appreciate specificity as far as numbers and proposals and ideas. So, and that thing with I'm sure you all have never had this with the manager. They don't want the idea from you to then flesh out. They want you to give them something, then they can mark it up and change it to their liking. But I get the feeling that that's kind of what we're looking at with taking proposals to the city council. Peggy, did you have other thoughts as to council's input or any other talks that happened?
No, I think you did a beautiful job of wrapping it up, and you did a great job in presenting to them. I mean, you got it down to no more than 11 minutes. We had 10, but it was riveting, and so then nobody stopped you. But you did a great job.
Thanks. Mindy?
Okay, so if I can jump on and tag on a little bit. So one of the things that we talked about before, and I think on our last meeting, we had some even discussion about future IQ. And so we did change the presentation. Instead of making a recommendation to move forward with future IQ, we just made mention that we would like to move forward with some type of consultant to engage in advanced scenario planning and to help us gather the data that we're talking about that we think we need to get. So that's where Karen Hunt's comment came from on you need to bring some of those proposals together. So we are going to spend some time in just a second talking about that particular item. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we were originally, I kept telling y'all we were going to do a joint meeting with Planning and Zoning and Foard and City Council. And they've actually narrowed it down to where they want it to just be Foard and City Council. They're not going to include Planning and Zoning at this time because there's still too much to hash through just on the topics we're covering. And then after we get some clarity on that, then at a later time, we'll do the joint meeting with Planning and Zoning and Foard. So they are trying to be respectful. First of all, we won't have our fully new seated council until the first meeting in July, which I'll explain in just a second. And then really we only have August, and respecting everybody's vacation time during the summer, they've asked us to kind of look at a date in September. And it may not happen in September because we've got to find a date that works for us as well as works for them. My suggestion would be to use our normal meeting date and time, if y'all are good with that, but we'll have to see if that works for council. And so knowing that we have a few months before we actually get to meet with council, I think we're at a kind of at a, not a standstill, but we're kind of at a stopping point until we do get further direction from city council. So we have these next few meetings to talk about to really clarify and solidify what we want to talk about with council at this work session, because while Bart did a real high level overview at the council meeting, when we get into the work session with them, keep in mind that we will have 2 new council members, first of all, that didn't hear the first work session. I say that, I think all the candidates were in the audience, so they actually did hear it, but just in a different capacity that evening. And then we'll go into a deeper dive conversation with them, getting into more of the specifics to really get direction on, we like this, we don't like this. So we'll have the next few months to do that. And then I'm not jumping ahead, and then also to work on, and that's really where I want us to spend the bulk of our time tonight, is really working on what we would want included in an RFP in order to get those quotes to go to council. So that's item number 5 on your agenda. Item number 6 on your agenda. So I'm not trying to jump ahead. I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for you, so you know that what our expectation is when we go into this meeting with city council. So again, we don't have to work on, we can, but really we need to solidify kind of that advanced scenario planning proposal now, so that we can start working on getting that built, so that by the time we do meet with city council, we actually do have some ideas and quotes on prices. So maybe we spend time on that tonight, and then at the next meeting, we can start diving into really the specifics we want to talk with council at the meeting. So that was really the only thing I just wanted you to know, because that night we didn't have a target, but now after the fact they said, shoot for September. So that was really the only input I wanted to add. So
I'd like to add one thing to you, Mindy. So as we discuss the pillars tonight, which I think is the next thing on there, it's very important that everybody keep in mind that each type of research that we need to do for each pillar, and at that time you need to flag those things that you need community input for, because that will make up the bid that we need to do in bidding all these consultants, so that we have bids. But so we should really flag that as we're thinking, because we'll have to narrow that down to a meaningful bid in order to get prices and bids back that are doable.
Again, we may end up with future IQ in the end, but it shows that we looked at, we tried to get as many bidders as possible to choose from. So, but that's a really good point, Peggy, because as I mentioned to Peggy and Bart after the meeting, we aren't going to have the opportunity to do this type of consultant work for every single goal under our pillar. So we do have to kind of capture it all this one time. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind, is we may only have one shot at the engaging a consultant plan. So we want to make that count. Was there any further discussion regarding the city council presentation? Okay. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised most folks didn't have like real difficult questions. It was just more along the lines of, wow, this is great. We're so happy y'all are taking a look at this. This is fantastic. Yeah, so that's good. Okay. Agenda item number 5 is discussion regarding goals of the future-oriented approach to residential development pillar from Vision 2040. So let me share my screen. Nope, that is disabled. That is fine. The Vision 2040 is up on Coppell's city website. It's pretty easy to find. And there's a 12-page summary document that goes over the different pillars. And Pillar 4 was the future-oriented approach to residential development.
You can share it now, Bart.
Oh, thank you. Yep, I didn't plan ahead of time. All right. So I thought it was worth going over these pillars as we get into discussions about advanced planning and kind of what we want to focus on going forward, and especially what we want our future consultant to focus on. So the first goal, establish programs to protect the unique character of single-family home community oasis nodes. It's a lot. A key point of pride and protectiveness in Coppell is the single-family home profile, especially surrounding elementary schools and key parks. Engagement and survey work revealed that the community is very keen to see this housing stock remain intact. Number 2, explore refit and refurbishment of older housing stock. Some neighborhoods that were established early in Coppell's shift to suburban development are now due for refurbishment. There is some desire to see the character of these neighborhoods retained. The city might consider providing incentives to encourage the refurbishment and implementing some protection of important architectural examples. Number 3, explore new options for 55-plus population that maintain high standard of living while reducing footprint. While it has been identified that 55-plus or retiree housing is needed and desired, the vexing question is where to put this housing. There is resistance to large-scale density. However, there may be potential for small-scale developments on the fringe of commercial or retail areas. These potential developments might accomplish the dual objective of helping reinvigorate some commercial areas and providing much-needed senior and retiree housing. And fourth, undertake studies to consider optimal future city population. Attractive communities like Coppell are subject to developmental pressures for vertical growth. This type of density has been resisted to date, but there is merit to undertaking a long-term study to evaluate various options, optimal future density, and ideal population. This type of study could give some insight into the level of incremental growth that is possible. So reading through these, obviously we have discussed some of these items more than others, especially with our initial focus on senior housing. But also we have the issue of single-family home profiles, especially surrounding elementary schools and key parks. And then goal number 4, which involves an acknowledgement that some densification and potentially vertical growth are in our future as well. Again, before talking about the advanced scenario planning and what we want a consulting firm to consider, this seemed like a good time to go over these goals and really remind ourselves of what the board was created to look at.
Hey Bart, do you also have a slide or have the page where it gives more detail to the 4 pillars, the one that we used in the presentation?
I bet I do.
Because that actually has some points that we're supposed to.
Okay. Let me find that here. Oh, yes. The more extensive one. Let's see here.
Yeah, it's got the green squares.
All right. Let's see here. But, this one that you're thinking of?
No, down from there to the next page. And the next page, right there. Those are the specific steps. Specific action steps.
All right.
So if we look at those, it'll narrow us down if we just go step by step.
So the first one involving the single-family home community oasis nodes, create regulations for sensitive redevelopment, tear down, rebuild of existing homes, and then develop internal structure within the planning department and city council to ensure all new development protects the unique character of each community oasis node. All right. The number refit. Sorry.
Go ahead. Are we discussing number 1?
Oh yes. Sorry. Let's do that. Let's thoughts and ideas. I guess as we're going through these, probably just best for folks to chime in if they have ideas. So
I'm
developing the
curious-
structure is interesting for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious if we can maybe reach out to other cities and see what their regulations are for redeveloping, for tear down and rebuild, so that we have some sort of a, some sort of a foundation of what's being done around. And I'm talking about cities that are like us, so that we know kind of what those regulations kind of look like.
Yeah, I mean the kind of opposite of this would be what you might see in Highland Park, where someone would take 1930s era craftsman or Tudor style home, tear it down, and build a 3-story structure out to the lot line. Just a huge monstrosity, which definitely does not protect the character of the neighborhood.
So maybe Highland Park is a good place to start. I mean, Mindy, do we have contacts over there to?
We can get one, definitely. So I can add. I'm writing down notes so I can add them to reach out and talk to them.
Mindy, I just have one other question. When boards and commissions are looking at other cities to compare to Coppell for things like this, are there specific cities that you can just name off the top of your head that we look at?
So we have comparison cities as a city. They're actually reevaluating those right now. So what our list looks like today may look different in the near future, but we can definitely work off of that one. So to give you ideas, I'd have to look. I think the majority of the cities surrounding us are in the comparison cities and South Lake and a few. So I'd have to. I don't know the list right off the top of my head, but we definitely have access to it. And I can't remember if Highland Park is one that's on there today or if it's one that they're looking when they make the change. But I definitely will write them down to reach out to them. And I can reach out to all of our comparison cities to see if they have regulations.
A quick comment. Has anybody characterized what the unique character of a single family home community oasis node actually means?
That was my question. That was my question as well. What's the uniqueness that we're focused on?
And
So
mine was really
unless there is something there that we have established as what we want to preserve as a unique character, I don't know, what are we going after then?
I cannot answer your question because I agree it's kind of ambiguous. What I was going to actually ask was for Matt and team to help define where those nodes exist. So is it around Lakeside Elementary? Is it North Lake Woodlands? What are the different nodes, and can we map that out so that we can look at those? Because there are distinct differences in the communities that have an HOA and those that don't around Coppell and things like that. My take on it, though, is that the city has so many zoning laws that I think kind of have already taken a lot of this into account. But maybe I'm wrong, and I'm just assuming, what is allowed and what isn't. I added on 1,000 square feet to our house, and we were very much limited on how far out we could go and things, but we could have built up. But I'm sure there was limits on that too. So yeah, I would like to see that map, because I think those nodes will help us define what is the character of each of those nodes.
Yeah, I agree. Because I live in Pecan Hollow, but I don't know that I'm in an oasis. I don't know
very
that
ambiguous term,
character.
At the same time, with that ambiguous language aside, I think we can agree if you can pick particular neighborhoods in Coppell and think, like, okay, this has a certain feel to it. The houses will be pretty similar, usually because they're built out around the same time.
Well, I think they have to be centered around a specific, like it says, the school or the park. So we're in North Lake Woodlands near the duck pond. That's completely different than the part of North Lake Woodlands that's around Austin Elementary. Or, I mean, they're similar neighborhoods, but our node is different, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think those nodes can kind of, if we pick the nodes, we kind of can define the border of each of the different oases.
Yeah, it's like the people who live right by the downtown area, or the place where the local diner is. I don't know what we call that, but
Old Town.
Yeah, Old Town. Those 2-story houses, those are unique, and they are right there around a park, and the park then is surrounded by restaurants and little shops. So that's a unique character of just that little spot in town. But I don't know.
Okay.
So is this similar to how some other cities have the historic district or something of that kind that we are trying to look at? Or is it specific to, like Russell mentioned, it's like they just organically kind of evolved as unique characters around a particular area, and we just, depending upon what time frame we are looking at, that's what we want to preserve.
I don't want to speak for Matt. So Matt, I'm sorry if you were about to jump in, but one of the things that I should point out is that staff wasn't involved in the development of the 2040 plan. Council was very adamant about that they wanted this to be the plan from the community and honored that commitment. And so I think, and again, Matt, you may have a different take, but it's hard for us to define what they meant in this plan because we weren't a part of the development to hear the conversation. So, I think you can drive around the community and you kind of gather what the character of that particular neighborhood is. So I don't know if it just meant to maintain what's already there. But that's, certainly could reach out to, I could reach out to the consultant and try to see if he could provide, or we did have a liaison from the city. I could probably reach out to her and try to see if she could help us understand it more specifically, if y'all want that. So,
Mindy, I didn't I obviously participate in all of it, but the 10% or so, if I remember correctly, this was driven by people wanting to experience what Old Town is, but we don't have the ability to change physically change the neighborhoods that exist because they're older. So this was their attempt, I think, to try to figure out a way to turn those neighborhoods into those kinds of nodes to where, and that's why it talks about programs. What can you do, I guess, is kind of like the neighbors night out or whatever that program is. What can we do to make that node area more cohesive, feel more like something like what Old Town feels like? Obviously, we can't get the commercial aspects into a lot of it, but I think that was the driving force, was because everybody wanted what Old Town had and they can't have it.
Okay, no, that's great. So thank you for.
I'll give you an example of my personal example of why we moved to Coppell. So we were not far. We were out in Irving, but I had friends in Coppell. They're still here. But every time I would talk, it was always centered around how kid-friendly the city is. So by far, it was like among all my friends, this city is a very, very kid-friendly city. You walk into a restaurant, you walk into a store, kids are always welcome everywhere. So it was a character that was that grew on us when we were out. It's okay, what are the places we want to be? We want to be in a place which is very friendly to kids. There are some cities where you go to a restaurant with a kid and the restaurant looks upon you as, it has happened to me in some of the bigger cities, but not in Coppell. So I'm just giving you as an example. Well, that is a unique character to the city, is the city is very friendly to kids. So I am looking at it from that perspective, as there is something that is a very clear distinguishing feature that brought some families here or many families here because it was a good place to raise kids. Everything is very nice here and stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be a physical structure with amenities and things like that, but it could just be the general complexion. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
no, you are, and I think that's that community cohesiveness. They're trying to get that in even a more localized, instead of just Coppell as a whole. They're trying to do that around those different schools or the different parks. And because once I'm about to be an empty nester in 2 weeks, and so when that happens, how does your community, your connection to your community change, and so forth and so on. And so anyways, we can move on. I think we got to cover a lot tonight, but that map would help.
Yeah, and on the regulations, I mean, like if I wanted to tear my house down and build one like is in Old Town, I could not, because our CCNRs for my neighborhood says my house has to be brick or has to be rock. It has to be masonry. It cannot be the siding stuff and everything. So are they meaning to do away with your CCNRs of the different neighborhoods, or for sensitive redevelopment, or
I think just, legally that's unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even envision that because there's so many CCNRs out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. Good discussion on that. Moving on to number 2, which was explore refit and refurbishment of older housing stock. This mentioned establish a local fund to help with incentives to support the restoration and renovation of older housing stock that has significant architectural or aesthetic value. I don't know how much historic architecture is in Coppell.
Started in 1955, so
yeah.
What's so historic? I mean, we're 1979, so our house is historic.
Yeah, we don't have any Frank Gehry houses or Frank Lloyd Wright houses.
No. So yeah. What is this historic here?
How do you define architectural aesthetics? I mean, I think my house is really nice, but
maybe we just look at the first part of it then. That's a little more helpful. And I think, one thing we put in the presentation, obviously, that you all saw before it went to the council, and one thing we found in our discussions about senior housing is that one way you can do it is not even necessarily having a fund to give out money. It's, that idea of you could also just have some sort of tax incentive. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it, which is good.
Yeah, I think
that's something we've talked about before.
I think we're more in line for that, for the tax abatement, than because I don't even know that there's any city out there that has a local fund to help restoration and renovation of older housing stock. Yeah. And I'm with Maria. I mean, when I lived in East Dallas, older homes were over 100 years old. They don't have any here like that.
Right.
The older thing here is the little Minyard's grocery store building that they keep moving around.
Yeah, I used to have a barn type building, down Lodge, down from where my neighborhood is, and now there's 30 new houses over there. So, that's different look at the historic buildings.
I would just suggest that we talk to the cities in comparison to us and see if anybody has a local fund, and if not, then we put our heads together about tax exemptions or tax incentives that we can do for, like we were discussing with the elderly. Maybe there's a way to do that for if you're restoring an old building or old house that's, I don't know, I would say at least 50 years old or more, but who knows?
Hi, Subu.
Yeah, I wanted to add something. Tamara Cook.
Hey, guys.
Oh, sorry. We'll get right back to you, Maria.
Okay.
Subu, go ahead.
So I'm wondering about the fund. Yeah. So research on, I heard some other cities don't have a fund, but has anybody done any research on this funding and how?
That's what I was asking.
Something about funding.
Yeah, we have to research that.
It's something we need to take a look at. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Maria, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I wanted to let you know there's a woman who lives here in Coppell, Tamara Cook, that she's part of the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and she attended I guess it was, I don't know, some kind of conference. And so she sent me the name. I'm going to put the name and the title of the person in Portland, Oregon. His title is Age Friendly City Program Manager. So the city of Portland in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has a person, a PhD, I guess architect or urban planner, whose title is Age Friendly City Program Manager. And I think they might have some, legislation or guidelines that might help us see that. I mean, kind of echoing what Peggy's saying to look at other cities. But I mean, there's even a job description for that in Portland, Oregon. So I'm going to put it in the chat. I just wanted to mention that.
When Russell and I were looking at the villages in Austin, there's the same office that Maria's just talking about in the city, and that is a new title that is in several cities. And when we were talking with the Village Network, they mentioned that, as well as then when we talked to some of the heads of the villages, they mentioned that they coordinate with the city through an age-friendly program manager.
Wow, that's really neat.
Yeah, so Maria's right on. There are cities that are getting that title in there.
All right. Very cool. Any other discussion of this particular goal before moving on?
Personally, I think that goal, maybe we should completely revamp it to what Peggy mentioned earlier. It is looking at maybe tax incentives or something of that kind rather than a fund. I don't think it even makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah. Definitely comes back to like the top line here as opposed to all the details.
I will say that last part of the sentence that we kind of wanted to throw out, I almost read that like we can kind of dictate what are acceptable types of homes for older stock that we want to start encouraging. So maybe it is, the craftsman look or so. I don't know what it is, but maybe that's what they're trying to say. That's the only thing I can add to this, because I agree. It's kind of ambiguous.
And I think that you're right about maybe it's not a local fund and it's the other, but I think we have to rule out local fund since they've written it in this document. We're almost going to have to at least tell the council we did look into a local fund and we found this, and this from other cities. And so really tax abatement is where we're going with it. If that, so that we can at least say we looked into this verbatim, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we can change the objective. This is our plan. And I don't think per se, maybe right now a fund doesn't make sense, but maybe in the future, yes. We can say maybe the low hanging fruit is start with the tax abatements and then if needed, then the fund. I think it's good that it says a fund because otherwise we're just, it's a Santa's list of things if there's no fund. It's a list that will never get done. I personally like the fund part, but we can just say we're recommending to start with tax abatements first. And then,
but do we then specify how the fund would be set up? Who's going to contribute to that fund?
Well, we weren't working on that. I mean, remember that what they asked us, the mayor, Karen Hunt, asked us to go on and start with explore the new options for 55 plus. So we were actually in the next little green square.
Right.
So now we're going to be looking at the other squares. And so did I understand correctly? We're going to get the consultants to help us on all the little squares?
Well, that's something we're gonna address, absolutely. But yeah, we should get as much done as we can with them. Absolutely. Subu, you had a comment?
Yeah. To the fund again. If Maria is strong about the fund, I think we all need to. Of course, I don't have vote. I'm not the voting member, but I think I'm not comfortable with that. But you guys need to make a decision on that, because if she's thinking we are not in surplus now, but in the future, I'm not even sure that's a viable plan. That cities fund and cities should be in the business of buying homes and all that. You know, the only thing should be tax incentives or motivation and stuff like that. But it becomes a slippery slope, and I just want to see some credible evidence that other cities have done it using taxpayer money, taking from Paul to pay Peter. So it'll be take from Paul to pay Peter, and then you're making Peter upset. So I think something to think about.
Well, I think it's definitely the case that we'll know more once we get a better feel for what other cities are doing. That'll help us have a better conversation about it for sure. Yeah, also true that we don't know what the future will hold.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next green box. Obviously the one we spent the most time on, exploring new options for 55 plus or aging in place that maintain high standards of living while reducing footprint. So exploring leading edge trends in small scale retiree complexes that might include limited height to provide smaller spaces, and incorporating communal areas with some shared facilities, investigate the potential for small scale mixed use buildings, business and residential or live work combinations, select several key pilot areas that allow more varied housing options, including some smaller footprints. All right. So obviously we've been looking at this area most. Interesting idea to kind of look at some potential pilot areas. This I think would be a thing to bring up in a council work session if we say, look, we have this area that could potentially, or that area that could potentially be a pilot area.
Yeah, I think that we have, I think we did a lot of good research, and I think we can take the research and kind of cull it out into each one of these three areas, like small scale, we have co-housing, we've got, so we have some investigation that we did that does fit into all of that. And so then there's areas of town where those could be done. We can work with Matt on those areas of town that seem fitting for what we researched. Luckily, we have all this research kind of behind us. And
that is nice.
Yeah, because the others are going to take quite a bit of research time too.
Anyone have any discussion points to bring up around the 55 plus? Yes, Maria?
I wanted to talk about what's happening in Grapevine, which around the new hotel. Have you all had a chance to see the new railroad station? And then I don't know it's not Maine, but the perpendicular has buildings that are four flights up, which was what the developer was telling us, and it's mixed uses. So there's commercial on the bottom and residential on top. And it's really interesting that it does have that bullet point there. And so when we spoke to the developer, part of the problem in making, first the footprint would be less, because instead of having one home or four homes, you'd have apartments, but you can make them smaller, but then the cost would be the issue. But if you have commercial on the bottom, then it makes those residential more affordable. So I think
the space more livable.
And the space more livable because you can walk.
You can enjoy the place. The street becomes an attraction. It's part of the life. It's not It's not just a place where the cars are moving. It's a place for living, for activities, to enjoy the city, to enjoy the place.
And
the street must become part of the attraction of the city.
Right, and so I think that mixed use might be the key. And I know we're not developers. We're not here to do the financials around that. That's the developers. But as a city, we should try to put incentives so that it makes sense financially to be able to do this without, doing a skyscraper of, 15 floors. And so I think the mixed uses, and when you go to Europe or you go to places where you feel, a grapevine, and you walk and you're part of the city, it's because of the mixed uses. But the zoning that we went into, in the 50s, 40s, or 30s or whatever, separates residential from commerce. But the cities that are most livable and that you don't depend so much on the car are the ones with mixed uses. So I really think this investigation of potential small scale mixed use, this would be something very interesting to put in the consultants' terms of reference, or I don't know what you're going to call them, RFPs or the bid, because there's studies that show that small scale businesses actually generate even more taxes than a Walmart that has like a whole bunch of land for parking and whatnot per square foot. So I think that's a revitalization of cities that's happening at Cedar Hill. It's happening Lancaster. A lot of cities in the South are revitalizing their downtowns and everything with mixed uses.
We have one here in Coppell. Can Matt talk about the George? It's a live and work building.
Sure. So yeah, it's down in Old Town. The first floor is the coffee shop, and then they put 2 residential units above it, and so that's really in an area where mixed use and live work is appropriate because there is a walkable environment.
So, Maria and Matt, I'm glad you're on right now. I agree. My thing is this is a fairly long-term kind of thing, because I think our modern downtown is what's going to have to become mixed use over time, especially as, 10 years from now, automated cars become really a big thing, and more of that parking space in front of Tom Thumb and across from, the new biscuit bar and all that becomes less and less important. You can maybe have a vision of turning those shopping centers and those areas into mixed use. I don't know if that's really a future IQ thing. I think that's a Matt and his team kind of thing. They have to decide that, because I mean, you've got ongoing businesses and you've got ongoing, people who run that commercial real estate already, and I think they're doing pretty well. I mean, most of them. It's amazing in Coppell, if you lose a small business, how many people are ready to pop into that spot. And so it's how are you going to work with those folks that already own that land in that area to redevelop it? Because it's already walkable, right? If we did a little bit of work and we could reuse that space, I think that's, and this is a 2040 plan, so I'm talking like 10 years from now. What are we going to do with it? So
Matt, the developer there for that, like Russell's talking about, I mean, his vision was to build a shop underneath and then build 2 houses on top of it, or two living areas on top of it, and then sell those living areas, or how does that work?
Okay, so are you talking about the George coffee shop, or?
Yeah, well, I saw the George, but then right down the street from that, they built like 3 or 4 houses that are downstairs or offices, and upstairs is a house.
Right. Yeah, and so we've got several other people that are interested in doing that along Coppell Road. And so what's slated for development on the east side of Coppell Road, north of Bethel, is kind of the live-work concept. And so we do have someone that is very interested in doing that. But essentially what it is you would live on the second floor and your business would be on the first floor. So it would be the same owner of the business and the residence.
Yeah, like my quick car guy at the quick car on Denton Tap, they live above there.
Okay.
So is it one developer that actually develops that and then sells it to somebody, or is it the actual owner of the George coffee shop or the quick car place?
Okay. Well, so George, he was the developer, or he was the buyer of it. So he lived there and owned the business and still does. But there are on North Coppell Road or South Coppell Road, north of Bethel, there's one that's a condo association. The first one that you get to, I guess there's 3 or 4 units there, and that's a condo. So they don't own the land. They all pitch into a fund to maintain the area, but they own the building, the structures on there. And the next one, further to the north, they do own the land that's underneath. So they would be the owner of the building and the land. And so that's really ideal, is to get someone to own the whole, the property and the building. So that's what we're shooting for, to fill in the gaps along Coppell Road.
And I guess what I was talking about, to get to more what I think Maria's wanting, is what would it take for the city to plan for the Tom Thumb Shopping Center to become mixed use 15 years from now?
Right. So that would need to be written into the comprehensive land use plan. The 2030 comprehensive plan, we did have a mixed use component in there, and Coppell wasn't ready for it at that time. So we went back and revisited that plan. We removed the mixed use from that plan, and we had actually written into the zoning ordinance, and so we removed it from the zoning ordinance. But we might be at a turning point. There might be a new council. We might be at the stage to where we need to revisit that. So I think we'll get some direction if maybe we bring that topic up with city council. I'm not sure if we're ready to bring it up at our work session in the fall, but
I'm not sure. I'm just trying to understand the process. So let's say they did agree to it. We changed the rules. Then we would have to get the owner of the shopping center to do the actual development, right? To take advantage of that.
Right. Yeah. And so, adding a residential component is attractive to developers, right? Because residential is where they make their money. So I think that taking an existing commercial center and adding residential to it might be attractive, for someone to redevelop if it's ready for redevelopment.
Thank you.
I think, Matt, if you remember where the 2030 plan is or whatever, we may need to look at what they wrote up that was not agreed to, that was removed, just so that we know what the history is in order for us to move forward. I think it's important.
Yeah, and I can revisit that, but essentially it was mixed use. It was true mixed use, because when you go into let's say a key intersection in Coppell, you do have residential adjacency. You've got the single family neighborhoods that don't necessarily want that right next to them. So it's having citizen participation in those hearings and getting what they want at that particular intersection. So I think there's a way to do it, but it definitely involving everyone in the community in those discussions.
So I think the consultant then wouldn't necessarily be looking at mixed use from a developer standpoint. It would be more of a location standpoint if we wanted to have a focus group with citizens to say, how close could this exist to your house before you're not comfortable? And that would be our citizens' input for things that we are looking at. Right?
Yeah, because there's definitely a difference between, like, if you took Tom Thumb and added 2 stories on top of it that were residential, the people that live in that neighborhood right behind it, I could see them not being happy with that. But there's kind of other ideas of where residential could be worked into a development that is different than that. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the Tom Thumb that's on Denton Tap, right behind it is just the police station and the YMCA, so there's nobody there to offend, really.
Well, that's one direction, but if you go east...
Yeah, all the people right off of Hertz are right behind Tom Thumb.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I am. Mm-hmm. I'm right off of Hertz. But, yeah, I get you. I just don't know that would be offensive to me. So, yeah, it's worth a study with the other people and see.
Yeah. Were there any more comments on this section? If not, and that's the one we've looked the most at, obviously. Yeah. And the last one is undertake studies to consider optimal future city population. And the bullet points here were study more efficient land use and the implications of additional space being freed up from redundant car parking lots. Assess best practice housing development policies in benchmark cohort communities. Okay. And develop housing options targeted to meet changing expectations and amenities for young workers and families, including more townhomes in the style of Old Town. I will say a lot of the discussion in real estate development regarding not even like large-scale, high-density development, but even like what's called the missing middle between just single-family residential and apartments. A lot of the discussion in there is that cities will have parking requirements that make those kinds of developments completely infeasible. So once we start thinking ahead, 10, 20 years, if that idea of parking requirement isn't as integral to the development, then you could start doing some really interesting things. And again, not going ultra high density, but still you're able to add some densification without requiring, parking lot and, built-in parking garages or something.
Does anybody know if they had specifics about redundant car parking lots? Is there a specific issue or a set of issues where this is a thing? I'm just curious.
Again, it was the smart city stuff driving kind of this of automated cars should take 50% or more of the automobiles off of the actual high roads. And everybody will be doing a Lyft or an Uber kind of thing. I was thinking it'd be even further out, but I just saw where a city or maybe Beijing just did a completely automated taxi service, and they're letting it loose in the wild for the first time. So it's not as far off as we think. And if that's the case, then it's more about how do you drive up to where people are going to be dropped off, and how do you control that flow in and into and out of the commercial areas as opposed to just static parking lots. And then what do you do with all that space? So
I think the city of Arlington is also piloting some sort of automated transit.
Okay. Wow.
I thought Coppell would be the perfect spot for that, but just because it's such a small, confined space that it would have been interesting. But who's going to ride in between, right? You need to go usually someplace further.
Yeah, just me going to Inamias doesn't seem like the ideal test subject for a car automation study.
No, but we would be perfect for the Amazon drone study, though.
Yeah, we would be.
Yeah.
So with all the stuff that I read here, one question comes to me is, did Future IQ look at Coppell with a microscope to see what are all the potential opportunities, or are some of these things just thrown out there from their study of how big cities have evolved, or whatever they have prepared for other cities or something like that?
I did participate in a lot of this part of it. Their process is very much a giant kind of focus group / survey of the citizens, where they're trying to whittle down what the community really, what the character of the community you live in, how you want it to be, and as a collective, how do we as the citizens want it to be? And I guess there are these different quadrants that your city can fall into, with ultra smart city, high density, versus this whole community oasis, single family home kind of thing on the other end of the spectrum. And it was just how much tolerance did we as the participants, and I think they had over 1,000 people provide input, over time. How much tolerance did we have for these kinds of innovations and changes? So, and so this is what came out of it, is essentially all the people who participated, what were their key primary factors that were they would like to see the character of the community be in 2040.
So I go back to the same bullet that we are on right now. Did any of them drive around the city or something like that to see did they do any field work at all, other than maybe, I understand they did surveys and stuff like that, but did anybody do any field work? Because this is very interesting to say efficient land use, that is a good term, but then implications of additional space being freed up from redundant parking lots and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, all their actual work was focus groups and surveys and things like that, or interacting in those focus groups, or their working kind of groups. But they are actually looking at a ton of demographic data nationwide, worldwide, and then looking at a lot of urban trends. And they're looking at all of the different trends as they relate to cities, and they tried to match us up with, here are the cities that are close to an international airport, who have demographics that are changing, like your community, that have a high education school, the school system. They tried to map us to those kind of communities. And so everything that's kind of driving, I think what you're looking for is, the reason I think they have this particular bullet point is they didn't touch on those things. And they're saying the Foard board is supposed to go in and dive deep into that field work and provide the more detailed studies. And they may have put that kind of language into a lot of the other pillars. I can't remember.
Hey, Peggy and Bart, great job. Has this been presented to the board, or when are you guys doing that?
What do you mean?
What?
What presenting what information?
The presentation to the city council, has that been done?
Yes, it was done a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Is this the presentation that was done?
No. So, sorry. I guess you missed the first part of the meeting. So no, this is going back to the Vision 2040 plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just re-reviewing the parts that relate to our board.
Okay, so the thing I think I heard some discussion on that. So when is the new? What was the feedback from the council, and when is the new council going to hear something about our work?
So our key item looking forward, the council was very, very appreciative of everyone doing the work. They were very interested in the material we presented. Our kind of key thing that we're going to be working towards now is looking forward in, I think it was maybe September at the earliest, having a joint work session with the city council so that we can discuss more specifics about things we want to address in the short term, as well as having the goal of having a project proposal together for a consultant and what we want them to do as far as pulling together information, doing focus groups. So yeah, that's defining the full scope of that work, and then getting ready for the council work session later this year. Those are our kind of current big goals.
Okay, so from now and September.
Oh, Suba, yeah, you went on mute.
So from now to September, that's what we're going to be working on, the proposal to the new council. Yeah, right. Okay. Okay.
Yep. Were there any other discussions about this, these points? Obviously, we've been talking about looking at best practices from other similar communities, so that's good.
So on that note, though, we wouldn't use a consultant to do that. We would just basically divide and conquer like we did for the housing, different types of housing for 55. So we would, take a point and then talk to the different cities to see what they had in place. So we do that. And then basically hone in on when we get to those specifics, which we have to do sometime very soon in order to get bids of what a consultant would help us with. So we need to really hone in on these points, find the information that we can find, and then say, here's the question for citizens out there. Would they embrace this, or would they, hate this? And then that's where a consultant comes in to help to construct focus groups or construct questionnaires that they can then hone in on and define what the answers were and what the answers mean.
Well said.
But in order to get those bids, we really do need to hone in on these and find out which ones of these actually need a consultant's hand to help us and which ones don't.
Yeah, good point. Okay. It occurs to me, Mindy, since we went through the process of getting bids before, but some members that are members now weren't members at the time we were going through and getting bids, it might be helpful to redistribute the kind of scope of work that was proposed so to the current members now, so we can take a look at that and take a stab at, everyone start thinking about how we want to look at revising that. And maybe that's a takeaway for next meeting, is to bring back ideas on revision.
Yeah, so we just had Future IQ's proposal, and so I believe it is out in the SharePoint right now. But I will also email it out to everyone. I can do that tomorrow so that everybody has a copy of it, and that probably is the best way to start approaching this. Is to take a look at their proposal, and maybe everybody can send basically points to me prior to the next meeting, so that then I can kind of compile those and kind of look for areas of consensus and kind of start building from there, rather than trying to build it tonight on the meeting. So that definitely, I'll definitely send that out tomorrow so that everybody can take a look at that, and then everybody just to give me their feedback prior to the meeting.
Mindy, also, do you know who all other consulting companies that have bid on things like smart cities? Are they looking at a different consultant to bid also?
They have paused their consultant work for now, and so they've not gone back out to look at any others. So we would put it out on our typical platform to bid. And then in the meantime, I'll start working on trying to find other companies that we can specifically reach out to, so that they know that it's out there and can bid on it. So I don't know those off the top of my head right now. I know the companies that bid on doing the vision plan for the city as a whole when Future IQ was selected. So, those would be I would think those would be a good starting point to see if they could do something like this also, and just reach out to them to let them know that it's out there to bid on it. So,
Mindy, I may have missed it, but has Smart Cities done a similar kind of presentation to the board yet? Like what Bart did?
You mean to council?
Council, yes.
Yes, they did actually several months before we did. And so they did, and when they did, they really laid out kind of their overall plan. Whereas we talked about our overall plan, but we're focused in really on one of the goals that is set before us. So I'll look for that date. I don't remember what the exact date was, but I can let you all know if you want to watch it.
I would like to watch it. I think it'd be good for us to see kind of how everybody else is moving forward. Because yeah,
I'd like to see that too. Yes.
Yeah.
But like I said, they were headed down the path of the consultant, and then the board basically paused and said, let's refocus and kind of work on all of our areas. And so, but I can definitely send you what that date was if you want to go watch it. It was during work sessions. So
that sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to add that in the beginning when we started working, we said we wanted to have maybe a joint session with the Smart Cities folks because it's two sides of the same coin, in a sense that when we're talking about innovation in residential development, it goes very much tied to technology changes in transportation, walkability or whatever, so I don't know if that's something, since we have from here to September, there's going to be a time when once we get the RFPs or RFQs, however you're going to do it, out, and then they're sending back the bids, maybe that would be a good time to meet with the Smart City, have a joint board meeting where we can share what we've done, they can share what they've done, and see how we coincide, because sometimes we have to break the silos. We don't know what each is doing. So yeah, that was my 2 cents.
Sure.
So preparing for the so whatever the September meeting is going to be about, are we going to focus on all of these goals, or again, are we picking a particular goal to work on up until that time?
I think the idea is to go in, well, two things. One is to flesh out, what we had identified as short-term programs or low-hanging fruit that the city could implement based on our discussion of senior housing. And then the second part, I think, at that point is hopefully we have the kind of finalized RFP and bids on the consultant work that we can take to them, go into detail with the city about, and then move forward to the next stage of getting approval for that. Does that sound right, Mindy, Peggy, Russell, all y'all?
I think, but in between there of we kind of have a feel for that low hanging fruit, and before we have the other part, it's going through all of these pillars and divvying up some research.
Yes.
So we haven't really looked at what is going to appeal to that younger generation, like in this final little green box. And I think we can kind of, do some quick research and come up with, well, here are the top 10 things that people are working on for young families, working young families that are going to attract them as far as housing options. And what does that mean? And us divvy that up kind of like what we did senior housing. And then I think there's other aspects of these bullet points and all the green boxes that we can kind of everybody take a piece of and go do our research. And I think that's what we'll be doing most of it the time. And as we get into that research, we will uncover the questions that we need Future IQ to go out to to the community and really get to the bottom of. And that's where Peggy's talking about, which one of these 4 options, with us narrow it down from 10 options to 4 options, which one of these 4 will, the Coppellites really take to, and that sort of thing.
Right. But I do think we have to divide and conquer on these bullet points. Like there were several bullet points where we have to compare what other cities have. And that's a starting point for us to say, do you have a program like this? And if so, what is it? So we've got to dig down into that. And then that would lead us then into the next step, which would be where we need input from the city or input from the community, either one. And that then would start to make our agenda for when we do have our joint city council, and also would also make our bid sheet for us to go and get bids with the consultants once we've narrowed down their scope.
Hi, Maria.
Yeah, I would also suggest, and I don't know if this is a Mindy or Matt kind of task or question, the North Central Texas Council of Governments has groups that meet around these topics. And we are members as a city, so that means we pay our fees, and they are very good at research and they have a lot of data. So I would ask for their input as well. Maybe they could narrow it down because they're looking at all North Central Texas. And we are part of a bigger system, a regional system, a national, a state system, a national system. So I would suggest that. And also, I put on the chat the person of Portland. I don't know, Mindy, if you saw that, you took notes.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah, Maria, can you read that out? Because it's my understanding in these recordings, and I'm not positive, but the recordings I've seen from Zoom, the chat is not there. So can you read that out so that we have record of it?
Yeah, the person that I mentioned that presented at this conference, where Tamara Cook, she's actually lives here in Coppell, she's a Coppellian. The name of the person is Alan de la Torre, and he is a PhD, and his title is Age Friendly City Program. He's from the city of Portland, and it's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, Portland, Oregon. And so this is the person I mentioned in Portland. Now, Portland and Oregon are very different to Texas. That's why I'm saying that I would put the North Central Texas Council of Government to work for us in a sense of asking them what they have researched. And they have a whole bunch of committees that are working. And, we're more similar to Grapevine or, South Lake or places like that than Portland. There's no solution cookie cutter that you can go from one city to another. But I think they're a great resource.
And Russell, I'll pull from our notes from the Austin Village people, the name of what Maria's saying, they have an Austin person that is an age-friendly city program director or something. I'll pull those notes.
Yeah, it would be, given how much I think we're going to have to research, I'm not sure how much we're going to be able to dig into this, but it would have been really nice to talk to one or two of those folks in this process, just to see what the cities are trying to do around the aging process. But, we've got our own expert. We got Matt and his team.
That's right.
As far as helping us with all these other housing options. So,
yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like we've kind of finished or wrapped up a discussion of agenda item 5, which is going over the pillars from Vision 2040. Item 6 is regarding advanced scenario planning. It sounds like our kind of plan for that at the moment is to, Mindy will send out the RFP, and everyone, if you could take a look at that and send Mindy, I don't want to say red lines, Mindy, we don't want to make your life too difficult, but how would you say it? Like suggestions
any kind
or
of bullet points? You can send red lines if you want, but any kind of bullet points of items that you really like from there or items that you don't see in there that you want included, just will help me to kind of then compile those to look at, like I said, overlapping or, where we see kind of a concentration of the same kind of ideas, then we can capture those to include in the RFP. So.
And I wanted to ask, I think you have a really good point there, Brad, that we have employees that are very well qualified and have done, a lot of proposals. And Matt was talking about, we had an original proposal of mixed uses in the main corridors. That's what I understood. And actually the council wasn't ready for that. So it was taken out of the proposal and taken out of the zoning. Maybe, Matt, if you can revisit part of these proposals that you made at one point, because, to propose the mixed uses, you have to have, corridors and the available utilities to be able to do that. So I think it would be also very good for us to have maybe not exactly those old plans, but the guidelines or criteria for what you designed before. And also, Matt, I think the consultants have to fill in the gaps of things that you don't have, because for us it's really easy to do a whole list of everything we want, but maybe the city already has some of these studies. Like, what are you missing? What consultant deliverables might make your job easier? I think that's a very important input from the employees of of our planning. What kind of things do you not know or do you want research on?
Just the overall direction of where we're headed.
Matt, your audio is really weird.
Yeah. Now you're on mute, Matt.
Oh. Yeah, hold. Give him a sec. He'll be back. Better than ever.
While he's.
I posted a link in the chat. We were talking about Portland. So Portland has a very strong autonomous vehicles mass transit initiative. So if you click on that link, you'll see it's like full on smart vehicles out there.
Matt, are you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I didn't want to interrupt Kamesh.
No, I'm good. I'm done.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I interrupted Mindy. So
I'm sorry. So what I was going to say is, really what we need is the direction in terms of the overall sort of idea of mixed use. Is Coppell ready for it? And do we want to reanalyze it for those key intersections and key areas of the city? So I think that would be a good question to ask City Council. Mindy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think so. The last comprehensive land use plan, which is where this mixed use development was included, that was prepared after the 2030 plan was completed. A consultant was hired, and they put together that plan. And then when the city had the first mixed use development proposed, that's when I think we got so much opposition from the community that City Council decided to remove that from the plan. And so, I think we need council's input. I think that's a great question for our consultant to ask when they're doing the focus groups in the community. Because that has been, Matt, I don't remember what year that plan was put together, but.
Yeah, it was like 2012, I believe. So
time has passed. We have new council, we have changing demographics. So I think that is something, and I think Matt's right, rather than us moving forward with something like that again, we need to get that input up front to make sure that we're not pursuing something that's going to be completely rejected by the community.
Right, and to add really quick, to add to that point before I forget, Russell, there's different scales of mixed use. And so you have the George mixed use, which is, one building in an area. And then you have a whole big development that's all mixed use, right? And there's vertical mixed use, there's horizontal mixed use. And so what type of mixed use are we talking about? Those sort of things need to be fleshed out.
Yeah, and in the previous plan was, because I guess, I had two questions really. The first one was, this came out of the Vision 2040. Can we find the data that's driving these bullet points? And it seems like that was part of, if I'm right on that the little green boxes, it was part of the bullet points for 55 and older, correct? It wasn't actually a bullet point for the younger generation or other folks. So is it possible to possibly provide mixed use in one of those areas that's geared toward 55 and older? Is that something that can actually be done? And that's a different twist on it. And I'm wondering if the community would be more in line. Obviously, again, the neighborhoods around that are going to be against this. If my house was backed up to it, I would be too. But the community, the data was driven from someplace, from 1,000 of our fellow citizens in Future IQ. And if we can find some of that data, that might help us understand better. We may already have it, what was driving that. So,
and Russell, I'm sorry.
No, and that's why I said that, Matt, if you could pull what was stricken from the record back in 2012 and kind of go over it with us so that we know what the council said that this is what the city citizens didn't want. So then we kind of know, because if they really weren't talking or focused on 55, or they weren't focused, or they maybe were focused on a large high rise that's 5 stories above an apartment complex that's above all these stores, to the degree that you were talking about. You've got small ones and you've got large ones and everything in between. So if we can hone in on what was totally offensive and what was just okay, then maybe we can go from there, because like what Russell's saying.
Right. And I don't want you to completely exclude that. Is my voice coming through okay? I don't want you to completely exclude that, because council's changed, right? And so the attitudes have changed, and the population has changed, since that time. So it's time for a new comprehensive master plan already. So hopefully, go ahead, Mindy.
No, and I think I think you're exactly right. And I think that's why it would be a critical question to add for our focus groups, because like Matt said, council's changed, our community's changed, and therefore the community that wasn't ready for it in 2012 might be ready for it now. But I will say, and I think Russell hit a really good point about really and we'll work on trying to get the data that's driving these bullet points. But I think it is under the 55 plus housing, because I think my understanding is one of the factors that concerns people and the residents of Coppell with density is how it impacts the schools. And so if it was limited to 55 plus, you're less likely to see it impact the schools. I'm an old parent, so I can't say it's completely, but I think that is part of what was driving the opposition. And I could be completely wrong, but if I can really remember, that was kind of the driving force behind the opposition to mixed or higher density mixed use developments back at that time.
Right, and then also it was pre-Cypress Waters, right? So Coppell hadn't seen that type of development that close. So that might have shifted some of the attitudes, some of the perceptions of mixed use.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Matt. So, I mean, I think that's why I think it does need to be included. The conversation does need to be included when we go back out to the community and in the conversations with council to see if attitudes have changed since then. So,
yeah, if you guys can give us the raw data that Future IQ kind of ties to that, just our whole pillar, I'd love to break that down.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask the question. I don't know the answer to that yet, Russell, but we'll ask the question.
I mean, it may be really difficult. It may be they culled through thousands of written responses to come up with like these are their findings. But I would hope that they kept kind of narrowing and winnowing those kinds of things down through further surveys. So there ought to be some data that says how many people voted on and said they were okay, mixed use was good in that area, just so that we have that data point to go to the new council with to say, hey, this is what the 2040 people said and how they said it. And I don't know if we want to, maybe everybody's okay with it now in a more general sense, and we're just not seeing that in the data, but.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely touch on, if you read that entire summary, which is on the website of our pillar, they definitely touch on that density is a sensitive topic in Coppell. They picked up on that through the surveys and the focus groups, and so they highlight that. But still, it's something we have to just explore further, I think. So,
yeah.
But yes, I'll look to see. I'll ask if we can get that raw data and get it to the group. So,
yeah. On the topic of future agendas, obviously we've set out a number of things that we'd like to cover in future meetings, which includes revising the bid proposal terms. Breaking down the pillar points into like actionable items, identifying comparable communities that we can then kind of gather information from on those actionable items. That all seems like that should keep us busy for the next few months, honestly. Beyond that, is there anything else that anyone wanted to bring up as far as future agendas?
So I want to pause real quick. I'm sorry, Bart. And if anybody has anything else to add, but that is a lot of information. We've not done a good job of honoring our hour-long meeting as recent meetings. So
I'm trying to move us along, Mindy.
I do want to hear what y'all would like to see on the June meeting, like what you want to start with out of our list of things, because we definitely can't cover all of that in June. So I just want to make sure we focus in on what y'all want to start with first. So
part of me thinks that what we need to cover in the RFP is going to be informed by, if we can knock out some information ourselves, like put together to-do lists and go to different cities, then that's potentially stuff we don't need Future IQ to, or consult whoever that might be to cover. So maybe that's the focus of next meeting is breaking down into actionable to-do items. And maybe, if we hand off a sheet to everyone and say, talk to Highland Park or talk to Plano or whatever cities are identified as being comparable to Coppell. That's my idea, at least.
Now I think that's good. So the number one thing would be to break it down and people to take, pieces of it and go off and research, and then we can come back together just like we did. Just for the new board members, when we did that, we broke it down and we actually partnered with somebody and did a lot of research and stuff, and then brought it back to the group. So you can meet with one other person and do research. Of course, if you have 4 of us, then that's a quorum. So you can't have that many people together. And so just so everybody is aware of that. And then, then you call through everything, and then we come back together so that we can hone in on what we need in the bid, on the bid lines.
So who's going to put together the list of things we're researching with the different cities? I guess I'm kind of ambiguous on exactly.
I see another spreadsheet here.
I heard rules
I think
and
that's
regulations.
I think that's the goal for next meeting, is for us to go back through what we reviewed tonight, but then create to-do items out of those.
Right.
You want me to
unless
take
I'm looking at it the wrong way.
You mean to take a stab at an Excel spreadsheet where I break down those green boxes and then...
I thought you loved your Excel spreadsheets. Peggy. Yeah, I thought you never asked, Peggy.
I saw it coming.
I didn't directly ask.
I was going to put everyone on the hook, but Peggy jumped on the grenade there.
I'll just send it out, and then everybody can add to it, and then send it back to me, and I'll have a finished product so that Mindy can include it in the packet, and then we can just discuss it and it'll be called down.
Okay. So everyone keep their eyes open for a lot of people that'll be sending out things this month. That's good.
Yeah. Keep your emails open.
Mindy, was there any other discussion about future agenda items you wanted to?
The only other thing I was going to ask, with the summer coming, were there any months, I think a lot of boards traditionally take a break in the summer, not the entire summer, but so it's really just making sure we're going to be able to have a quorum during the summer months. Do you want to meet every month during the summer? So that was really just one thing I was going to ask the group to see.
I'd like to volunteer something. How about Mindy, Cammie, Matt, all of you guys kind of tell us which month y'all want off? Because it seems like you guys have got to be killing yourselves with all of these boards and all of these meetings. And so this is a very small amount of our time versus how much you guys are doing. So feel free to tell us when you don't want us to meet. One time.
That's a great suggestion.
Well, so for example, I know I'll miss the August meeting, but that doesn't mean that the group doesn't have. I mean, that the group can still meet without me, but I know I'll be gone for the August meeting.
I propose we don't meet in August. I think last year we didn't meet in August.
Okay.
So I just want to throw this out there. I'm not saying that I'm against not meeting in August, but it would mean that in July we kind of got to get our ducks in a row for the city council meeting if our September meeting is our joint meeting. So just so everybody's thinking that far ahead.
Sure. What I'll do between now and June is try to solidify the date. Well, that's not true. We can't do that in June, by the June meeting. So the new council, I was mentioning, the new council won't be fully seated. So everyone except for one member will be seated by then. But since the runoff meeting is the runoff election, the election date is June 5th. They cannot canvass the election by June 8th, which is the only council meeting during the month of June. So that means they won't be able to swear in the new member until July. But with that being said, they'll know who the new member is. So starting, mid-June, we could start trying to finalize the date for the joint meeting based on the council member schedules. I just may not have it by our June meeting. So.
And we can always assess where we're at and whether we think we need to have that extra meeting or not. Yeah. Anything else for us to cover tonight?
I don't think September is written in stone.
No, but it was.
Right.
It's what we're going to try to ask the council about September.
Yeah, I just think August. I mean, there's a lot of people with children that take time off, and
And like I said, I'm okay with us not meeting in August. I just wanted to remind everybody that we're going to ask the council in July about the September date. So we need to be mindful that we have to have our ducks in a row. And that's not to say that we won't have them in a row by July. Maybe a slam dunk.
Mindy, how much lead time do you need? Because it would be great if we could meet in July and assess where we're at before you even went and wasted time asking them. Because if we're not prepared and we're going to skip August, then we need to push it back to probably October. And so if you don't need 2 months lead time to ask that question, then I say we just wait until we're done in July. And we can always talk about this on next month too, but
yeah, no, that's fine. We can wait till after the July meeting to try to schedule our meeting with council so that way we can assess where we are after the July, at the July meeting to see, are we ready for a September meeting or do we want to push it out? So that's perfectly fine. And again, September was not set in stone. That was just the earliest date that they were suggesting that we meet so that we give council the summer. They've got budget during the summer, budget meetings and a plethora of meetings during the summer. And so trying to give them a little bit of a break to enjoy their summer also. So.
Okay. That works for me.
Okay.
Everyone keep your eyes out for email from Peggy with a spreadsheet, from Mindy with RFP data. Be sure and review those and respond back to them in timely manners so we can keep the process moving forward. Anything else to cover before we adjourn for the evening? We didn't have a specific new business agenda item, but no, I bet everyone's ready to go for the night. Me too. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. Really do. Hope you all have a great rest of the month. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Bart.